For Monday, the 17th of April, I'm Randy Kure. This is a What's Up the Sports podcast. We are live via Twitter Spaces at What's Up Podcast. If you're watching today's episode on YouTube or if you have it downloaded, we appreciate you as always. On today's episode, the Toronto Raptors are out of playoff contention, and some say it's due to a 9-year-old child. The Toronto Maple Leafs are getting ready for the playoffs and will battle the Tampa Bay Lightning once again. In rapid fire, the Toronto Blue Jays are not getting top quality work from their top pitching starter. Major League Soccer is now on a top streaming service, but are they getting top ratings? And the top draw in golf may officially be at the end of the road. Joining us for the roundtable once again, Antoniou is in the house. Tony, how's it going?
Good, Randy. How are you? Thanks
Doing
for
well.
having me.
Oh, always. Thank you so much. Also joining us, making himself available for some sports chat as always, Dan Leggieri is back. Dano, how are you?
Oh, hello, Randy. Happy to be here as always.
Thank you. And joining us for the very first time, his name is Neel Katarey. He is a sports fan like Tony, Dan, and myself. Really excited to hear his insight on the sports world. Neel, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, I hope I got your last name correct.
No, I'm close enough, and it's perfectly fine. Happy to be here, Andy. Pleasure to meet all you guys.
Okay. So I am one to acknowledge when I made a boo-boo. So how do we pronounce your last name?
Oh, no, you got it right. It was Katarey, but
Katarey. Okay, great. So, hey, score one for Randy. Right on. So, appreciate you, Neel. Thank you so much for joining us at What's Up Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Of course, I do have a website, whatsuppodcast.blogspot.com. But yeah, it doesn't really get a lot of hits like YouTube. But I'm working on it, fellas. But guys, I want to, I don't really know. I don't know about you guys, but I don't know if there's a real better time to be a sports fan than in the month of April. I mean, the NCAA had March Madness and the Frozen Four. Golf had the Masters. The NHL playoffs are starting up. Same with the NBA. Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer are starting their seasons. But guys, I did want to start. I was listening to TSN 1050 radio in Toronto, and the host of Overdrive and one of his co-casters were more so excited of the Toronto Blue Jays home opener rather than the Toronto Raptors playing basketball game. And I was a little surprised by that. I mean, sure, new season, new renovations had taken place at Rogers Center, but playoff basketball is playoff basketball, whatever your thoughts are on the playing game. Or maybe you don't really have a lot of stock in the playing game that the Raptors took part in against Chicago. Dano, I'd love to start with you. And where do you fall, if you could rewind yourself from a week ago, were you more so jacked for the Blue Jays home opener or the Raptor game?
Absolutely, the Blue Jays home opener. And, it's probably because, you sort of alluded to it where a lot of people don't see the playoff or the play-in tournament for the NBA as legitimate playoff basketball. And truthfully, I think a lot of fans in Toronto came to the realization a long time ago, in this season anyway, that this team, the way it's constructed, is not a legitimate contender for any title. It was great that they made runs. They had really great flashes of really great basketball from individuals on the team, but collectively, honestly, I guess in retrospect, we talked about this in the last podcast, where the trade deadline was probably their opportunity to get rid of a lot of these assets for younger players or draft picks, just because a teardown or even a blow up seems inevitable now. With the nurses probably leaving and Van Leet's leaving, but then within that as well, so you have that sort of downward trajectory for this team, and with the Maple Leafs as well as you're doing, and the promise of the Blue Jays, which is what I'm getting to now. I'm sort of winding my way into a cohesive thought. There's been a lot of buzz for the Blue Jays over this winter for sure, and the moves that they made and the veterans that they brought in to complement the young stars that are on this team. And they're projected to be a top 10 team at least, if not contend for a title. And there's predictions of by even from some players, where there's a legitimate chance that this team could win 100 games and maybe challenge for a division title. So the Blue Jays came in with more buzz, with a new stadium as well that really helped them. So I was for sure more excited to watch the Blue Jays home opener than I was the Raptors playoff game.
Might help if I'm off of mute there, but Neel is in fact a Toronto Raptors season seed holder, and this is the second season where the NBA had this play-in tournament where the conference's 7th through 10th seeds take part in this single elimination game to make it to the main playoff format. Neel, we're definitely going to be talking about the Raptors in a few minutes, but with regards to the play-in tournament as a whole, are you a fan of it, or do you think it's a bit of a, I guess, sideshow, for lack of a better term?
Well, I can say that although I was not too excited, frankly, for the Raptors play-in game in particular, because as Dan alluded to it, this team has just sort of I'm a little past it, and I'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But the play-in tournament itself, I'm actually a big fan, and I think that Silver has really done a good thing for the league, putting this play-in tournament in. I thought some of the games that we just saw in the play-in tournament were pretty exciting. They really did, to me, have a playoff feel. I don't really follow college basketball too much, but I love March Madness, where every game seems to be a win or go home type atmosphere, and these teams played like it for the most part. I think it makes the seeding race more interesting, especially post All-Star break, because it seems that there's always a couple of teams on the fringes that aren't quite garbage teams or at the bottom of the standings, but they're sort of vying for that last couple of seeds. So it makes the playoff seeding race more interesting at the end of the season. I do think that it does have the potential really to reduce tanking, but Mark Cuban aside, perhaps. And I also, just to say, I do think that it probably fires up these lower seeds that end up making the last two seeds, probably giving them, that little bit of an edge that they've had this little bit of a test, possibly making those 8-1 and 7-2 matchups that you don't usually think of as being too good a little more exciting.
Yeah, and definitely, the emotion that the past couple of seasons had with the play-in tournament, it definitely was some great quality basketball. And Tony, I for one had a really, really bad experience at a home opener. It was while Halladay was pitching, he actually pitched the home opener. It was a season opener, give or take, in 2007. And to me, it was just a bunch of people who were there for a sideshow. There was a lot of fights. There was not a lot of security. And I vowed never to go to at least a baseball home opener. I was really excited for the Raptors play-in game against Chicago. You, of course, an employee of Scotiabank Arena. You have seen a number of season openers, home openers. You're a Toronto FC season seat holder. In your opinion, in a general sense, do you think home openers are overrated, or are you extremely excited to see the season, the respective season start?
Yeah, I don't think they're overrated at all. I think they're very exciting. Hope springs eternal, and it's everybody goes in fresh, and the excitement level. I see what you're saying about Blue Jay games. There's a propensity to have a lot of freaking drunks at baseball games more than anything, more than any other sport. But I have not experienced anything like that during Leaf home openers or Raptor home openers or even TFC home openers. I mean, I'm twisted sometimes at a TFC home opener, but
whatever do you mean? I mean, you and I, we've
we've met for a couple of beverages, but
yes,
no, I don't think they're overrated. I think they're they have a special place in sports, right? It's the beginning of the season, and fans are always hopeful at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, perhaps maybe I'm just too jaded in my old age.
You're getting old. I think that's
well,
it.
no, I mean that part is a given, but that home opener that I was mentioning there, and I'm not exaggerating, when there were 13-year-old children in yellow security guard jackets surveying, like in the 500 level, which is where I was sitting, and it was just complete garbage. And of course, and that was in a 50,000 seat stadium of Skydome. And of course, in game 2, it was like 34,000. So there was just a lot of people there for the spectacle of game 1. But okay, fair enough. I was the only one who was more so jacked about the Raptors play-in game. But hey, to each his own, of course. But speaking of that very playoff game and the Toronto Raptors, guys, the season is now over. The Raptors were eliminated by the DeMar DeRozan and the Chicago Bulls, or should I say DeMar and Diar DeRozan, DeRozan's 9-year-old daughter. She had developed, she had screamed every single time the Toronto Raptors made attempted a free throw. They missed 18. They were 50% from the free throw line. The Raptors lost by the slimmest of margins. And well, now they have packed their bags. Now, Tony, you were working the Chicago Bulls game. First things first, did you hear Diar DeRozan? Because I, for one, noticed it, and I don't know about you personally, but with regards to that distraction, I think anybody would have been distracted to hear somebody screaming at the top of their lungs just when they're about to release a ball during a free throw.
Well, while I was working, I did hear something, but at the time I didn't think anything of it. I thought it was a strange sound. I'm like, is like somebody killing a squirrel or, and, but this, I was in the middle of a busy stretch behind the bar, so I didn't think anything of it. The funny thing is, prior to the game, I had a little bit of time, so I was just watching the shoot around. And as usual, I like to watch Nav Bhatia because he comes in like a high roller and knows everybody and saying hi to everybody. And he actually walked in with this, with this woman and her daughter. And I'm like, she was distinct. I noticed her because she had this loud fur coat on. And I, again, didn't think anything of it. This is Nav Bhatia. He brings people to the games all the time. And then after the game, with about 5 minutes left, I had time to watch the last 5 minutes of the game after my bar was closed. And during a Chicago free throw, I can see Nav standing up and throwing like a little towel up like he does from time to time during the free throw to try and distract. So this little girl runs over and kind of snatches it out of his hand while in the process. So I put 2 and 2 together at the time. I said, holy shit. I said, I think that's DeMar's family. It's got to be. And then sure enough, after the game, I'm going through Twitter and just everything's blowing up about it, and I'm reading about it. And so it was funny. I got to put everything together while I was there in real time. I disagree with you 100%. They don't deserve a pass. They're professionals. They're professionals. And when you're a professional basketball player, they're called free throws for a reason. And you miss 18 of them, you deserve to be where you are right now. And that's probably somewhere on a nice Caribbean beach, enjoying a few Mai Tais or tequila shots or whatever the hell they do. That's inexcusable. I'm sorry. Now, here's the thing. I guarantee you, if that was a grown adult who was able to screech like that in that fashion, I wouldn't be surprised if a player would ask, to either be quiet or get out, knowing how NBA players work and how sensitive they get when they're on their floor. They're quick to give the hook to people. But obviously, seeing that it was, a young girl and the daughter of one of the players in the game, they probably, gave that a pass, but still no excuse. I mean, there is no excuse. 18 free throws missed is just atrocious.
Well, I mean, forget about the fact that it was someone's the daughter of one of the players. It's the the daughter of perhaps the most loved Toronto Raptor in team
Exactly.
history.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so that remains to be seen in terms of what would have happened if an adult was doing that screaming. But hey, give it to Diar. Obviously, she came up with something that I think worked. Now, obviously, yeah, there is some validity to what you said about missing 18 free throws. However, if they did make 5 or something, like they would have, if they made 50% of what they missed, they would have gone on to the actual playoffs.
Yeah.
But
They didn't need to make a few more, like just a couple more they needed to make, and
sure,
they probably would have been in good shape. But you know, a 19-point lead again, you blow that, there's no excuse. Like how do you justify that, right? Yes, you give the other team credit, but you know, it was just that's the full job. There's no other way to look at it.
well, and now the only way to look at is now is obviously the following season. And Daniel, the Toronto Raptors have some big decisions to make. Fred VanVleet has an player option for the upcoming season. So does Gary Trent Jr. OG Anunoby is locked for the next season, but he does have an option the following year. Nick Nurse's contract is up after next season, but there is speculation of what his job status may be like. What do you think the Raptors should do after this, let's call it what it is, failure of a season? Dano?
Sorry, I wasn't sure who that question was. Yeah, I kind of alluded to it before. You know, you mentioned Nick Nurse specifically, but I don't see how any owner can take what he said near the end of the season and gladly keep him on in what would be a lame duck season for the head coach. He clearly said, without saying it, you know, he's a calculated guy. He doesn't talk off the hip or with emotion for the most part. He's a calculated guy. He says what he means what he says. So it sounds like he wants out, and he wants out now. And I'm not sure what happened or what's going on behind closed doors, if they're having a rift, or if he just sees the writing on the wall as, you know, he's sort of done all he could with this team and recognizing that change is on the horizon. You know, I don't know how you go into next season and convince your fan base to be more excited for your playoff game than the Blue Jays home opener, right? You don't want to keep running into that situation. So you're almost, now is a good time. You're distracted by the Leafs are really good, the Jays are really good. You know, maybe now's the time to tear it down a little bit. Let the older guys walk or trade them to, you know, contenders. Let them play meaningful basketball and start to rebuild. Find a coach who can bring up a young team. You know, I'm not even sure what's going to happen with Masai or with Webster. You know, we could be looking at wholesale changes, and not because people are getting fired for, you know, not doing the job properly, but just because it kind of feels like the end of an era. It feels like a turning of the page. And I said this the last time we talked too. I didn't feel like they should have went into the trade deadline and into the playoffs this year with the roster the way it was constructed. So, you know, they got the perfect excuse now where they almost beat themselves. They prove that they lack that killer instinct anymore. And yeah, it's probably best they just you know, start building around Scotty. And if, you know, I would keep OG. Truthfully, I know that he's going to demand a king's ransom on the trade market, but again, he's a really young, really good defensive player that you can build around. He can be a core piece. You know, if you can find some other complementary pieces to put around him. But for the most part, I think it's time that you sort of strip it down and rethink the long-term strategy of this team.
Neel, as we were leading up to today's episode, you said that you had a lot of thoughts towards what the Raptors should have done. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it does seem that you were on the same page as Dan and thought that the Raptors should have skipped this season, tanked, and maybe go for a top pick in the upcoming draft.
I think the important thing to say is that Masai deserves almost every benefit of the doubt that we could possibly give him. The guy has earned his legendary status in Toronto. He's earned every piece of praise that he's the architect of the greatest all-in move possibly in sports history for a one-year rental. With that said, it does feel like a miss. I agree with Dan. I definitely thought we should be breaking up the team, getting as many assets, draft, and young players that we possibly could, and really just rebuilding around Scotty. I think that some of the side effects now of not doing that is that Pascal's value has possibly dropped a little since the All-Star break. To me, he was playing a lot worse after the All-Star break than before. Even though we got Pirtle, which again is a little bit of a head-scratching move, we gave up a first-round pick for Pirtle, who's now an unrestricted free agent. That, I think, should have opened up Pascal's game even more. Instead, it seemed to have a negative effect, not to mention these guys are best friends. Fred, again, and Pirtle, you'd have to sign and trade them to get anything for them at this point. OG, one thing I will disagree with Dan is that I do think OG is a extremely valuable piece on the trade market and should be moved for the first-round picks and young players that he most likely will bring. I think one important thing to keep in mind with this question is that the Raptors play in probably the best or second best division after the Pacific Division in basketball. All of the teams in the Atlantic Division are not only young, but super talented or coming up. And I just don't see that we're not going to be in the basement of the Atlantic Division for at least 5 years. So I think it almost lines up perfectly as the appropriate time to go the route of Sam Presti, of Danny Ainge, sell off all your players, get those young assets, and draft capital, and really set your mark on 5 years from now when hopefully the Raptors will be competing with the likes of OKC and Utah, who I foresee to be fantastic teams around that time as well. Not to mention that just on the OKC and Utah kind of point, those have really made Ainge and Presti look like geniuses. Markkanen, I mean, that's just fantastic what he brought in the Mitchell deal, and then for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which there's not a lot of people who I think would rather have Paul George than Shai at this point, just on their team. I personally would much rather have Shai. Those teams are not only up and coming, but they're so fun to watch, and I think the Raptors really should be aiming to emulate that. Build around Scotty. One thing I'll say about Scotty, just to finish this off, is that I really try to avoid judging players until their year 3 season. And I think the best possible thing that we could do for him to see if he truly is that centerpiece that I believe he can be is to make him the centerpiece, the two-way centerpiece, give him a better leadership role, and really see what he can do with a very high usage on a young team in that manner. And I really do think that if we do things the right way, that we will be a fantastic team ready to take charge of our division and possibly conference in a few years. And we'll show everybody that Scotty really was the right move, and it was a gift that we were able to move up in the lottery to get him.
Well, okay. Well, Scotty Barnes and the Raptors getting Barnes when nobody thought that he was worthy of being the 4th overall pick. That goes without saying. But I, for one, wasn't overly disappointed that they did tank. I mean, I have said from the beginning that this whole notion of not having a legitimate 7-foot center, I mean, yeah, sure, the majority, like a lot of teams in the NBA have done it. I don't think it works. Just because you have like a physically shorter center doesn't mean that that person is a 3-point option. That's number one. Number two, so let's say you strip it to the bare minimum and have Scotty and build around him. That doesn't mean that you are going to guarantee yourself as a championship contender. Trade Pascal Siakam. What are you going to get? Trade OG Anunoby. What are you going to get? To me, I think the core is Barnes, Siakam, and Anunoby. I'm not overly convinced that Fred VanVleet is that guy that's going to take you to the next level. And I mean, I think that everybody thinks that, I mean, just because you are going to tank, you are going to see dividends right away. It doesn't happen. I mean, Utah finished 12th this season in the West. Oklahoma City didn't make it out of the play-in. So yeah, I mean they have some exciting pieces, but I mean, what does that get you?
Sorry, let me step in here. But if you're not properly restocking your team if you're not exploring trading a guy like Siakam or a guy like Anunoby. What their return, the possibility on their returns, is what's intriguing, right? If you're ready to move on with new blood and you're building a team around Scotty Barnes, it is absolutely useless to have Siakam for sure, in my opinion. Anunoby, I'm always back and forth on him. I still don't know what he is. You see what he is, but it seems like he lets you down quite a bit. Although I think his season this year was a lot more consistent than what we're used to seeing.
Sure.
But without trading those pieces, you're not getting that capital, the draft capital, the prospects that that Neel is talking about, right? So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I know you want to keep some guys. I know there's sentimentality, but look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. They did the sentimental route, and now they're not in the playoffs. So you got to tread carefully with that stuff.
I just want to add a point about Siakam. When we were in the finals, I remember Siakam had. I really don't remember another player that I've seen have a better finals debut than Siakam had. Part of that though was because he had Lowry and Kawhi sort of as the 1 and 2, and he was the 3. And he's so perfect in that 3 role, possibly even a 2 role. I think that like, not to say that this would ever happen, but a player like Luka Doncic, if he was a 2 to Luka being the 1, that's a match made in heaven. But he's not a 1. I don't believe that he's a 1, and I believe that he can command close to a 1 level of assets for us if we were to explore that.
I think sorry to cut you off there, but I mean, trading somebody like a Siakam, who you say is a championship team's 2 or 3, like how are you going to get that number 1 piece? Now, let's take a look at the draft. Let's say that Toronto collects a whole bunch of draft picks, and of course, this upcoming draft, everybody's just drooling over Victor Wembanyama. And apparently Scoot Henderson is the projected number 2. But there's a reason why Kevin Durant was the 2nd overall pick, because Portland saw something in Greg Oden. Look how that turned out. Michael Jordan was number 3 because Houston saw Hakeem Olajuwon, granted, Olajuwon, legend. And then Portland, again, drafted Sam Bowie. So, you get in the position of a draft pick, but I mean, like a top draft pick, but a draft pick only means so much, right?
Well, it's like going to the. It's like,
please, Tony.
Sorry,
go ahead.
It's like going to the casino and sitting at the blackjack table. You're not guaranteed to win anything. You might lose a whole shitload of money that night. It's the chance you take, but. The point is that you acquire enough draft capital and you hope that your staff, and Masai's a genius, right? So you're going to expect him to draft properly, but you won't know until you have those opportunities. And if you're not trading away assets like a Siakam, like an Anunoby, you're not going to get a chance in the top portion of the draft. Trading for Jacob Poeltl probably wasn't the answer. I love the way Herbie says it. Herbie Coons, sure. The way he says it's awesome. But I think that's the point. Everybody makes mistakes at the draft, but you have to give yourself a chance to have draft picks, right?
To just add on to what a draft pick could mean, you don't always have to use those picks.
Yeah, you could flip them.
You could flip them. So if OKC or I think OKC is a better example, because in a few years with the pieces they have, those guys are really building something strong. They might have a lot of leftover picks that they may not even want to use, but they could package to get that final piece that would really take them places.
Well, that's via trade. Now, that being said, I just wonder if Nick Nurse is in fact that kind of coach, that kind of difference maker. I have still yet to be convinced that Dwayne Casey couldn't have coached the 19 Raptors to the championship. He didn't have somebody like Kawhi Leonard. Nick Nurse did. Now, the following season, Nick Nurse did have did win Coach of the Year, but there are a number of examples where I really questioned how he rolled out his bench, the players that he had on the court. And but to that, I'm sure that everybody can tell me a bunch of examples where Nick Nurse was a genius. There's rumor that he is going to Houston. I mean, we'll see what happens there. But how confident are you that Nick Nurse is the right person to lead the Raptors? Anybody?
I like to compare Nick Nurse sort of for the hip hop fans out there, sort of to like Eminem as a coach. Eminem's first 2 albums or Nick's first 2 years were legendary. He won us a championship. That's the Slim Shady LP. And the second year he won Coach of the Year. That's the Marshall Mathers LP. Everything after that, I don't even remember. And to be honest, the Raptors are the type of team where they are not greater than the sum of their parts, which the good teams are supposed to be. They got good pieces, but they somehow are not greater than the sum. I think that type of thing falls on the coach a little bit. It has to. And so while I do think he's a fantastic coach and has done amazing things for Toronto, I've started to lose a little bit of faith in what he can bring to our team right now.
Well, it hasn't been even 4 years yet, and the Toronto Raptors are in a position that they are in. I don't know, call me a bit of an optimist, but I do think that they do have pieces there. Now, I'm more so curious that if you do strip it down to the minimum, does a guy like Scotty Barnes want to stick around in Toronto? If you do go for a tank, then you do have to capitalize on the choices, free agent signings, drafts that you do make. So Masai Ujiri, he definitely has a lot of guts, and it'll be interesting to see what he does for the upcoming season. So guys, over to the ice, and of course the NHL playoffs are just about to start. And once again, the Toronto Maple Leafs are facing the overworked Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, they have been to the Stanley Cup Final 3 years in a row. They won 2 of them, but of course, they lost this past season to Colorado. And Neel, getting to know you, you don't appear to follow hockey as much. But of course, it has been close to 20 years as with the Leafs making it out of the first round of the playoffs. Would you perhaps get a little bit jacked up if the Leafs, I guess, first thing win a first round series and maybe even make a run deep into the playoffs? Oh, Neel, you're on mute there.
Sorry about that.
Sure.
Full disclosure, I'm actually an Oilers fan. I was born and raised in Edmonton, right when the middle of the dynasty. So I grew up only watching hockey, to be honest. But it was when I moved to Toronto, when Toronto played Philly in the Carter years, in that epic 7-game series, is when I started to become a basketball fan, and slowly basketball took over my sports landscape. But I love the buzz in the city whenever a Toronto team is doing well, whenever the Jays, the Leafs, Toronto FC, it doesn't matter. It adds to the city's vibe. It adds to the electricity around the air, and I'm here for it all. So I'm absolutely hoping that the Leafs make a deep run, and I'm really hoping that the Jays make it far as well.
Yeah, so for your hometown of Edmonton, I mean, they got that McDavid fellow, and he's pretty good at hockey. So hey, maybe Canada could win a cup for the first time in since 1993. Those Canadians there. So as we do this call on Zoom, Dan has his name on our call as Lonny Bohonos, who is a one-time Maple Leaf who did have a decent playoff run. Dan, do you remember what year that was? This is when Bohonos was and the Leafs were playing in the Gardens, right?
Yeah, it was right around that their heyday, 94, 95, 96. It was in those years. He very rarely played in the regular season, but for some reason they would always call him up around playoff time, and he would light it up at least for a few games to start everything. It was and he built himself a nice little reputation just off of that. But from what I heard, then he went to Europe and he can never really get his life together or get his stick on the ice. If you catch my drift, and just sort of faded into hockey obscurity. But a great name nonetheless. It's
a pretty cool name. Do you know what number? Do you remember what number Lonny Bohonos wore as a Leaf?
Oh boy, 18.
I was thinking.
I thought it was 16.
Yeah, I was thinking 16 as well. Yeah,
I think it's 16.
Anyway, shout out to Lonny Bohonos if you're out there. But
someone Google.
Okay,
if he knows where he is.
So, Dano, as we try and take a look at the history of Lonny Bohonos, especially as a Leaf, I mean, as mentioned, it's been a number of years since the Leafs made it to the second round. In fact, if it was 2004, that was when you, myself, and Tony were at Seneca College, and the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't made it to the second round since our school days all those years ago. I mean, they are facing a very tired, you would think that they're tired, Tampa Bay team, like mentioned. They've made the Stanley Cup final each of the last 3 seasons. Is this the year for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Do you think that they're going to get out of the first round?
It's such a weird question to ask a Leafs fan because, yes, of course I'm going to say this is the year that Alex Lyon stands on his head and beats Boston in the first round, and Toronto's path to the Cup final becomes all that clearer. But truthfully, first round, yes, I do, as a hockey fan, as an observer of the sport, I think that they will beat Tampa in the first round. What happens after that, who knows? And for little reasons, this team is built differently than last year. It's tougher. Hopefully mentally tougher. It's got some really good pieces of people that have played in the playoffs and know how to get down and dirty and win those puck battles, and jam in those ugly goals. And I know it doesn't really mean much, but they just beat them up, pretty decisively last week. Short-staffed against the full Tampa complement, as full as they're healthy anyway. But, we always talk about on this podcast that you cannot discount experience in sports. So as tired as Tampa may be, they don't want to go quietly into the night and just be an afterthought. They want to prove that, this team is built to last. They're not a bunch of senior citizens. They're a little bit older, but they still have a lot of great young guys. They still have arguably the best goalie in the league. They still have a coach that is proven to be a winner on all sort of challenges. So I think it'll be a test for this team. But I think that this team is, from my point of view, I think that the leaders on this team, specifically the core 4, aren't going to let it happen again. So they're going to, these guys are going to do everything they can to not only prove to themselves that they can shake this first round curse, but to prove to the world. Like, sports players have egos the size of stadiums, and sometimes you just will yourself into a position to be the best, or to sort of pull your way through a 7-game series. Connor McDavid is a good example of that, where he seems to be the Michael Jordan of our age in the NHL, where he took Matthews winning the Hart last year personally, and he's put up 150 plus points this year. And just very quickly, Neel, it's very understandable for you to have hockey fall off the radar when the Oilers were just as bad as they were for as long as they were with all those first round picks, and then fall into basketball. So that's completely understandable.
Although we did make the finals in 2006 or 2007.
What a run that was.
So same thing with those guys. It's just, in Montreal a few years ago too, there's just sometimes it just clicks. Sometimes players just refuse to lose, refuse to sort of give up. But I sense that from this team. I think that O'Reilly's going to be a good piece, not only on the ice, but in the room to calm some nerves and to, bring some poise to people who may be going into these playoffs, gripping their sticks a little bit tighter, hoping that they don't suffer the same fate. Matthews and Marner in particular, when it comes to games, to close out games anyways, where their stats aren't in line with the superstars that we all know and want them to be in the regular season. So I think they do it this year. Truthfully, I think they go to the conference final this year. But that's part just thinking with my heart and part the objective. But I'm really excited for the Leafs this year. I think they got a lot to prove, and I think they're gonna take us on a little bit of a journey, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with them.
Yeah, okay, maybe all of my optimism is on the Raptors as opposed to the Leafs, but when your goaltender is Ilya Samsonov, I mean, yeah, sure, he's had a great season, but doesn't playoffs count for playoff experience count for something? I mean, yeah, sure, Darcy Kemper maybe. He was, of course, the goaltender for the Avalanche, winning the Stanley Cup there. And very quickly, I did do a search, and Lonny Bohonos did wear number 16. And I don't know, Tony, Neel, if you have an obscure hockey player that you had an affection for, but I remember Guy LaRose back in the late 80s. Like he had a bit of a moxie as well, and I think he scored like 8 goals in 8 games or something. And then he was basically the toast of the town. And then it was kind of like Linsanity for Jeremy Lin. I mean, he was the best thing coming, and then all of a sudden just dropped into nothing. But Tony, I mean, you pledge allegiance, of course, to the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, obviously they have a plethora of legends on that team. Like, was there one Penguin or maybe even Leaf or maybe a player that you have no idea why, but you just thought was the best?
Well, it was on the theme of playoff performers, clutch playoff performers coming out of nowhere. I don't know if Dan remembers a player by the name of Chris Kontos. He had a fabulous run with the Los Angeles Kings, and I believe it was around the same time. I think it was the Wayne Gretzky teams. His name was Chris Kontos. He just came out flying out of the gates, scoring a whole bunch of goals.
He scored. Tony, didn't Chris Kontos score 4 goals in the Tampa Lightning's very first game?
Yes, but he made his ass famous from a playoff run with the Kings, I believe. Now you got me thinking, but yes, Chris Kontos was part of the expansion Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming he's Greek with the name Kontos, which is why
there you go.
He's stuck with me. But that's my guy. Nobody for the Penguins really, because whoever plays for the Penguins is pretty awesome. There's nothing obscure. There's nothing obscure about them.
Well, whatever do you mean? I mean, they just Lemieux, Yager, Malkin, Sid.
Yeah,
oh, goodness, like it just goes on and on. I mean, I throw Fleury in that list. I'm not gonna.
He should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, he'll be there in a second.
He'll probably end up there.
Neel, how about you? I mean, Edmonton didn't really have anybody worthwhile other than Gretzky, Messier, Curry, Lowe, Fuhrer, now McDavid, Draisaitl. I'm losing my breath here. But was there one guy very quickly that you have no idea why, but you were a fan?
You know what? All those guys you mentioned, but I think one guy that comes to mind is you name off all the stars like on an NFL football team, but you never really name off the offensive linemen, the heart of the team, the gutter guys. And for that, Dave Semenko, he was Gretzky's enforcer. He was the guy opening up those lanes, fighting for Gretzky, not letting anyone mess with him. And I think he even boxed Ali at some point. So you could call him a multi-sport star, but I'm not sure if that was some type of fun exhibition or what. But certainly, the heart of the team, a guy like that who never will get really accolades outside of the immediate market he plays in or with real diehard hockey fans, but deserves some credit for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, to add to your point there, When I think of playoff runs out of nowhere, I think of John Druce for the Washington Capitals. Like, I think he scored
Yes, that's
14
right. Him.
goals in 15 playoff games for the
Yes,
Caps.
good one.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, we got off topic here, but it's always good to veer off into something like that. But Tony, of course, Toronto has a lot riding on this coming playoff series. When you think of the likes of Shanahan and Keefe and Austin Matthews and their futures and so on, I mean, if Toronto can't make it out of the first round again, should major change happen? And should the team look for new leadership?
Well, that's the question. I think that's the better question to ask. You would think that something has to give, but ultimately the question is, will it be that guy making the decisions? And it's up to Brendan Shanahan, of course, but is Kyle Dubas the guy to make those changes? He's had, several kicks at the can. Is Sheldon Keefe the right coach? So it all starts there. I mean, we could sit here and evaluate which players you should trade and which you shouldn't, or who do you not re-sign, or who do you, and all those things. But the bottom line is it the right leader leading the ship? And we'll find out after the first round. If the Leafs advance, then I would imagine there's a contract in Brendan Shanahan's office waiting for Kyle Dubas to sign. But if they don't, things might change. It might be a different story. Now, Kyle Dubas is very sought after. The Pittsburgh Penguins are going to be knocking on his door. I read that already. Interesting development today where Brad Treliving walked away from his contract offer from the Calgary Flames. He's going to be a hot commodity. So, I'm playing a little bit conspiracy theory here. Are the Leafs kind of sitting and waiting to see where Brad Treliving's at? Because he's an excellent general manager as well. But to answer the question, not babble too much, the bottom line is, who is going to make those changes if they need to happen?
Well, and it all gets going for the Toronto Maple Leafs. At least tomorrow they will be hosting the Tampa Bay Lightning for Game 1. Guys, we're going to head over to Rapid Fire, and that is, of course, called Big Deal, No Big Deal. So basically, Neel, the deal is that I'm going to pose a scenario to you. You're going to tell me if it is a big deal or no big deal. So we are going to start with baseball, and the Blue Jays have had a decent start after having a long road trip to start the season. They have done pretty well. However, one person who is struggling is their supposed ace, Alek Manoah, excuse me. He does have, after 4 starts, an ERA close to 7. He has walked as many batters as he has thrown in innings. Dano, Alek Manoah having such a poor start with 4 starts this season already, is that a big deal or no big deal?
It's a big deal because, like we talked about before, this team has championship aspirations, and it's not like the rest of the bullpen or the rest of the starting rotation anyways lighting it up. Even just tonight, Gosman got lit up for 7 runs in the bottom half of the first inning. Barrios hasn't been great. He's been struggling with his command, and Kikuchi's really been your best starter. Chris Bassett isn't off to a good start with the Blue Jays as well. So, not having stability from your ace, not having that reliable start that we may have been used to from getting from going back to Halliday or from Estrada, with his few-year run here. So it's a big deal, and I don't know what the issue is. I don't know if Pete Walker is the concern. I don't know. Pitchers are a funny thing. They're like golfers. It's very much more of a mental game than any other position in baseball. So, for a young pitcher to struggle the way he is now under the bright lights of being an ace for a championship caliber team is concerning, because it could change the complete makeup of this team, could change the way that they approach trades or trade deadline, or if they, what the plans might be for the years to come, because they're investing a lot of investing a lot of money, frankly, and a lot of effort into, winning now. I think that Shapiro and teams see a window of opportunity to win, and it's now. It's within the next couple of years, and if the race isn't the race, then that changes a lot of the plans. So he's got to get back on track. He's got to get back on track quickly before it becomes an even bigger deal. But for now, it's a big enough deal where it does require some attention.
Well, you got to wonder if a trip to the minors may help someone like Alek Manoah. Of course, we saw it with Roy Halladay. He had a poor start to his major league career. He went as low as single A, and of course became one of the best pitchers in baseball, especially during the early 2000s. I mean, to put you on the spot, do you think that Alek Manoah could benefit from like a trip down to the minors, maybe sort of recharge his batteries, get his head more focused? Or do you think that, he should just stick it out, learn on the fly?
Yeah, I don't think that a trip down to the minors would ultimately hurt. This franchise has a really spotty record with pushing guys too far. Ricky Romero comes to mind as somebody who they just kept hoping that he would figure it out, and he didn't. Aaron Sanchez is another one with his finger issues. I know that blisters sort of derailed his focus here, but and maybe because we have this urgency to win, and we don't want to be perceived as doing anything but, that maybe the coaching staff or the organization feels pressure to just keep guys where they are and have them figure it out. But to your point, Halladay, it was his first season when they sent him down, so a little bit of a different scenario, but ultimately it works. Baseball is not a young man's game. It's not like hockey or soccer or basketball. Like it's made for mid-20s and up, when they start to really come into their own, especially pitchers. It's normally they're like late 20s, early 30s when they peak. So there's no need to rush this kid. And I think he's 24, he's somewhere around there, 24, 25. So, he's got a lot of baseball in front of him. So, by any means necessary, treat him right, get his mind right, get his arm right, and he'll be a benefit for much longer than he would if you just keep pushing him out there in hopes that he turns it around and figures it out.
Yeah, a lot of people are predicting Toronto making a deep run to the Fall Classic. And of course, if that does happen, guys like Alek Manoah has to have a quality season. So, Tony, fans of MLS will have to include Apple TV if they want to watch their favorite team of the beautiful game. As much as 40% of MLS matches will be on the Apple TV app, where broadcast outlets who traditionally had MLS games like TSN are only showing one match a week, which means splitting up CF Montreal, Toronto FC, and the Vancouver Whitecaps. I mean, with MLS going to Apple TV, like in terms of the growth of MLS in Canada, is it a big deal or no big deal?
I don't think it'll help. Based on when I read like Toronto FC Twitter and stuff, they're not happy with the whole setup. Now, as season ticket holders get the MLS package for free. It's part of the deal. So we're lucky. To be honest with you, the quality of the product on Apple TV is out of this world. It's amazing.
Is it really?
But I think it's a really nice, like, great broadcasters, just clarity, no issues whatsoever. So I'm happy with the product, but I'm a season ticket holder. I get the package for free. I'm not in that majority that aren't happy about this. But I think the real story is our national broadcasters. They should be ashamed of themselves. They're walking away. The fact that we have to watch national team games on One Soccer or Fubo TV, and now MLS games on Apple TV, like Canadian teams, that's on TSN, that's on Sportsnet for not stepping up and buying into these products. And I understand it's a business, but surely it's not costing them. Live TV, I always hear, is the cheapest product for any network, right? Live sports. I don't understand why they're just walking away from it.
Well, and for somebody who does go to his fair share of TFC games and is not a season seat holder, I really did have a decision to make, and as of right now, I'm not up for spending $130 to watch 8 or however many TFC games are going to be exclusively on Apple. To me, Major League Soccer is a regional following where I don't know how many people in Chicago will watch FC Dallas and Inter Miami. It's like maybe I might have a little bit of interest for Vancouver and Montreal only because they're in Canada, but take a look at the rest of this country, let alone of fans in the US. I don't know if this, especially when it comes to Canada, I think that this is going to be a huge problem. I don't think people are going to specifically get this package to watch Toronto FC.
No, and like you said, it's a niche audience, right? So those specific people that you're targeting, I guarantee you they probably have DAZN subscriptions because they want to watch Champions League. They have Fubo TV subscriptions because they want to watch the Premier League or the Italian League. So they're going to now, they probably have Netflix, they probably have Prime Video. So they're going to now dip in and spend more money on another streaming service just to watch. So and obviously MLS will be the odd man out, right? There's
Like,
there's
for
just
you personally, sorry to interrupt here, but
no problem.
do you have like the traditional, like whether it's Bell or Rogers yourself? Because what I'm also wondering is MLS trying to jump the line where broadcast television is such where instead of Rogers, Bell, whatever they have in the US, that it's going to be more so streaming. It's the Netflix, it's the Amazon Primes, it's Apple TV, and so on. You know what
For sure. They're getting into it. I believe they have a deal with baseball too, if I'm not mistaken, as well, right? They have MLB games on
maybe.
Apple TV, I think, because was it last season we would miss a Blue Jay game, like a random Jays game on a Friday night, wouldn't be on Sportsnet
Wasn't
because it was on Apple TV, I believe.
wasn't one of these games on Facebook?
Maybe I think there was an NFL game on Facebook.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it, but I mean, it is going to your point to
We are going by the way of streaming for sure, 100%. There's no question about it. But obviously a league like MLS doesn't carry the same kind of weight that other leagues in North America do. So I don't know what kind of impact. They're doing a great job. They're trying real hard. My understanding is they can pull out of the deal at any moment. They can pull out after the first year if the numbers aren't working for them. But they're trying really hard, and I'll give them credit. But again, if I didn't have it for free as a season ticket holder, I don't know if I would be purchasing the service. Right.
well, and I mean, yeah, like not to put any aspersions or like any fear, but like is Apple TV going to be free for season seat holders forever and ever? Amen.
Probably not. Probably
Yeah,
not.
I mean, Dan, Neel, with regards to Major League Soccer, Dano, you and I have had a number of chats with regards to soccer, more so with regards to international soccer, European soccer. I don't even really truly know what your consumption level is of Major League Soccer prior to this current season. But with regards to Toronto FC and the fact that the majority of these games are going to be on this on Apple TV, like, do you guys see that eventually people may subscribe more to these streaming services like Apple TV and so on?
No. And for the MLS specifically, if some of the bigger leagues start to move more games to Apple TV or to Facebook or behind some sort of paywall somewhere else, that's different. Like baseball has that pedigree where they can do it. MLS is just, I think they're just strangling themselves by making the product unavailable to an audience that's still growing. And they're missing an opportunity, especially in Canada, where more eyes have been on soccer than ever before with our recent World Cup, and we're hosting the next one. So for the next 4 years, whoever's making the decision in Canada should be saying that we need to put this sport anywhere and everywhere. So by the time that it rolls around here, it's the biggest fucking thing. And, and then from there, we can sink our teeth into, young kids who are going to fall in love with the game. My guy is my little guy. He's a perfect example. He's just turned 7. He watched the World Cup, and I can't get him to stop fucking suing around the house because he loves Ronaldo now. And as annoying as that is, I think it's wonderful that he fell in love with such a beautiful sport.
That's a product of bad parenting. Sorry.
My wife, whose father is unapologetic Italian, sucked up and bought him an entire Portuguese kid.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Anyways, sorry to interrupt. Move on.
But I do think it's a mix. Like, to Tony's point, it's like people who want to watch it are already watching it. And I'll sort of put an asterisk on myself there. Season ticket holders are going to watch the game, and they're into it, and they've already bought in. But especially in Toronto and across Canada, we've got a lot of multiculturalism. We've got a lot of people of European descent or of African descent or Asian descent now, even too, where the sport keeps growing and growing with stars like Son in the Premier League. So it feels like a big miss. You should be able to just turn it on and tune in. I don't care if it's on local Rogers. Like to your point, Randy, it very much is a local sport. I've got a friend in the New England area, and they don't care about anybody except the Revolution. So it's not that MLS fans or MLS fans. They're more fans of the team. And I can't say that for everybody, but it feels like more often than not that seems to be the case. So put the game on TV where people can get it, and help grow the game that way, or else you're going to miss out, especially in this window of opportunity.
Yeah. Neel, how about you? With regards to soccer specifically, I don't know how much of a fan you are prior to Canada's run to the Men's World Cup, but obviously soccer in this country has just been on such a high. You think of the success of the women's program, winning gold in the Tokyo Olympics, with with the now lack of access towards soccer, Toronto FC and the rest of North American soccer, is this an opportunity lost? And first of all, I guess, what is your following of soccer? And were you starting to get into it because of Canada's success the past couple of years?
Well, absolutely, I was. The run at the World Cup, just the hype about that, it definitely raised my level of fandom for the sport. I always thought it was a beautiful sport. I always watched Champions League finals and major events, but I would say I'm a casual soccer fan. As far as this move, certainly I agree with Dan here that, it seems like a money talks type of move, and that I don't know how much of it is the MLS trying to circumvent the big networks, or as much as it is Apple just showing them a big check and sort of getting what they want. And I mean, they already got Ted Lasso. They need more soccer now. So, it seems like a move that not necessarily is good for the game or the fans, but it's probably good for the MLS's wallet.
It feels short-sighted though. Like if this is a decision driven by MLS executives, I get chasing the dollars now and maybe trying to change people's watching behaviors and get them to come, to pay the service subscription or whatever their deal is. But it's, like the Super League in soccer was such a big deal because it would dilute the product across the lower levels of sport, the D leagues and C leagues. And I was even just reading this morning that there's a hockey tournament in Spain going on right now with, countries like Spain and Iceland and, other countries that you wouldn't even think have hockey teams. And they're funded by the Olympics, the World Cup, and the IIHF World Championships. So, getting hockey players into the Olympics is a way to promote the game, not today, not this year, but for the long term, and to sort of, help raise money to make sure that the sport thrives at a lower level, so then stars can bubble up through the system.
Sure.
Soccer is the same thing. So, if decisions are being made at an MLS executive level to say that we just need Apple's money, and we hope that the audience follows, rather than saying, let's make sure that we grow fans, and we have people we have kids wearing Toronto FC jerseys or Montreal jerseys or Dallas FC jerseys, in their areas to grow that way and get involved in the game, and convert these kids into lifelong fans. That seems to me like it would be a more beneficial play than what they're trying to do now. And again, I should probably qualify that by saying I don't know what the decision was to strike this deal with Apple. I'm not sure if it was just because, maybe Tony's right, maybe it was just because the broadcasters in Canada who would have made it accessible to a general audience just didn't pony up, and then that's shame on them. But whatever it is, I think that the season, I think at the end you'll see viewership take a dip because of it, and I think that some people may realize that I don't know, a different way or a different thought process needs to be put in place to help support the game long term.
Well, I can imagine guys like yourself, Tony, were really interested in Sportsnet on Saturday mornings, where they were showing Premier League and so on, Jerry Dobson and Craig Forrest, and now they've taken a step back. They're going to One Soccer, and the quality isn't ideal. And good on Apple TV for presenting a quality product. I mean, I did see the season opener, but it was at a bar. I didn't really get a chance to really appreciate the quality of it. But it does seem that this is a decision that is going to hamper North America in terms of the growth of specifically MLS. I mean, when you talk to soccer fans, nobody that I personally have come across really put MLS at that top of the pyramid level. I mean, like with me personally, like I don't really follow soccer in Europe, but I do follow Toronto FC. I don't really so much follow MLS. And with everything that has taken place over the past couple of years, I mean, it's really, really hard not to fall in love with soccer, especially with the excitement of the women's team, the Women's World Cup coming up in a few months, Australia and New Zealand. And now that they were putting it to a format where you had to pay more money, like I mean, I had to have the discussion with my wife. I have to get a subscription to One Soccer, then I have to get a subscription to MLS. They're doing everything they can to shoot themselves in the foot. It's really, really sad to see. But to Tony's point, if you are correct that MLS could have a chance to step away from Apple TV, it seems that a lot of people are not able to watch their local club, especially with Major League Soccer. So be interesting to see what happens there, for sure.
Also, if Messi comes over here like he might next year or the year after that, then Apple might not have as a hard a time selling subscriptions then. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how much the MLS can really start to draw more and more names. Toronto made a good effort bringing in a bunch of Italians to start last season that generated some buzz and got the international eyes on MLS, and they're going to have to keep doing more of that. Even when Rooney came over or Beckham, these are moments in time where the international soccer eye is on MLS. So maybe this year with Apple, they're just like let's sort of set the stage for this is what is going to be. It's just like, raising gas prices until you get the consumer used to paying that much. So, we'll do it for this season, and a lot of people will complain, but then they'll miss out because we start
Right.
bringing in Messi, we start bringing in Mbappe, maybe not Mbappe, but you know what I mean? Like all these sort of and then people are like, well, shit, $130 for the year doesn't seem that bad because I get to watch these, internationally known stars that I recognize by name, but I want to be a part of, watching them play in Toronto or in Atlanta or whatever it may be. But I'm with you. I'm interested to how this plays out. I'm watching it with curiosity, and we'll see. Maybe they know better than us.
Maybe. Finally, guys, golf fans did have the chance to see Tiger Woods at Augusta once again. Tiger Woods, of course, had an incredible amount of success. Well, he's one of the greatest golfers of the history of the world. But with regards to the Masters, he did make it past the cut, but did have to withdraw in the third round due to plantar fasciitis. Of course, he did have a serious car accident where he had a number of injuries. And a lot of golf fans were really sad to see Tiger Woods limp the way that he did before he withdrew from the Masters. Me personally, golf is my favorite sport to play. But it has been a number of years since Tiger Woods was a dominant force in the PGA. He had won the Masters in 2019. His last tournament win altogether was 4 years ago. Golf does seem to be thriving. I mean, take a look at golf during the pandemic. I mean, a lot of golfers, a lot of new people came to the game. Neel, with Tiger Woods, the belief is that his glory days are behind him. The possibility of him overtaking Jack Nicklaus as winning the most majors in PGA history doesn't seem to be something that he could achieve at this stage. With Tiger Woods potentially fading into the sunset, for lack of a better term, for the sport of golf, is that a big deal or no big deal?
It's a big deal. It's a huge deal because I can tell you this. The sport of golf needs Tiger more than Tiger at this point needs the sport of golf. He has done so much from them, and he's paid his dues. He's a legend. He's going to go down no matter what as the top golfer of all time, arguably. And then the other side of it is like, the PGA, he brings in so much casual fandom in particular. He's a magnet for casual fans. I mean, and me, I'm definitely a fan of golf, but I am on the more casual side when it comes to knowing everything about all of the rankings, players, and non-major events. But I always look at Tiger, and I'm always interested in every Tiger headline I still see. I'm always clicking and reading about Tiger, and I'm sure many other people are the same. And then the other thing, who doesn't love a superstar that transcends his own sport? He reminds me, he's in a realm with very few others. It sort of reminds me of Michael Jordan's Wizards years, where you knew that he wasn't going to do anything, but he was still selling out every single arena he went to. People were tuning in for Wizards games whenever they could get them, just to lay eyes on the great one. And, to me, you mentioned the 2019 Masters. To me, outside of obviously being a diehard Raptors fan, the 2019 Masters was easily the second biggest sporting milestone of that year. The crown jewel of 2019 to me is the Raptors championship and then Tiger's win, because that was probably the most invigorating golf tournament I've ever seen. The big part of it was Tiger. And, part of me really, really hopes that there's a third wind in there somewhere, because I think it might be the biggest story ever in golf if Tiger was to come out and win another major after not only going down already to the basement once and coming back up and winning that Masters, but for him to do it again would be just fantastic. So to answer your question, Tiger, I wish him the best. his health, his family. These are bigger priorities at this point. But the PGA needs him a lot more than he needs the PGA.
Tony, Dan, I mean, between the two of yourself, I mean, I guess it's one thing if Tiger Woods takes part in said tournament. Uh, Obviously, ratings are going to jump, but I mean, it may get to a point where Tiger could be in part of a tournament and he's not going to do squat. Neel did mention Michael Jordan and the Washington Wizards. For the sake of legacy, could Michael Jordan have done without those years in Washington? Brett Favre with the Jets and the Vikings. You think of Daniel Alfredson playing for the Detroit Red Wings. There's a lot of instances where stars didn't leave at the right time. And golf specifically, it seems that if you don't win the tournament, it doesn't really matter. If Tiger Woods, it's one thing if Tiger Woods competes, maybe finishes top 10, but if he's going to hover around the cut line, you may think that there's really no point in him taking part. You guys know what I'm getting to?
Well, yeah, I do know what you're saying. How I feel isn't important, this is how he feels. And I would imagine a guy who got to the level that he got to in his career won't allow himself to be a sad case and a sad story. I don't think so. But maybe he just loves the game and he's going to keep giving it a shot as long as he's able to. Right. I'm one of those guys that Neel's talking about where if it's not for Tiger, I have zero interest in golf. I mean, I've talked to you guys about being at the Canadian Open when he hit that shot at 18 when he was a kid back in 2000. That was one of my favorite live sporting moments ever. I would have never went to a live golf event if Tiger Woods wasn't there. I'm completely honest with you.
Sure.
I'm not a golf guy like you. I don't watch golf at all. But if Tiger is around and he's hovering, he's the story, I'm interested. My ears are perking because you're paying attention to greatness, and not just out of this world greatness. Like you put him in that category with a Muhammad Ali and so on and so on. That kind of greatness, Michael Jordan, like Neel mentioned. But I think he'll know. I don't think he's gonna waddle around like a sad case, on the golf course if it continues like this. I just get the feeling he'll shut it down.
I have to think, though, that if there was a time for Tiger Woods to leave, I do think it's now. And I could appreciate that you don't really know, like you don't follow golf. And I don't watch, golf pretty much unless if it's the majors. Let's be real here. But with this whole rivalry between the PGA and Live, the Saudi-backed tour, stars Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, who are names that I'm sure that you three know, go to Live. Then they take part in the Masters, and Phil Mickelson went to Live and contended. Finished, I think, third or fourth. I
thought it was second.
It very well could have been. You know what? I didn't. I can't remember the stand, but I mean, he had a fantastic tournament. And imagine if a Live player won the Masters, because ever since that tour started, golf fans haven't heard squat about DJ or all the golfers, Sergio Garcia and everybody else, Ian Poulter. So as much as Tiger Woods, I became a lot more interested in golf because of Tiger Woods. And obviously his legacy is what it is. But I have to say, like, the reason why I was so much more interested in the Masters this year was because of Live, not because Tiger Woods was taking part in it or not.
Yeah, it's going to make the whole sport more interesting down the road. It's it's one of those things where it's like the KHL. So imagine all the best KHL players came together with the NHL players to play in a best on best tournament. It creates a rivalry. It creates an us versus them. It creates this good guy versus bad guy almost, even though, live golfers aren't bad guys, but there's this perception, especially if you're a PGA loyalist, where you might look at the guys who left for live as, traitors in a sense. And then when they come back, you just love to watch them fail to your PGA boys. But that's all, it's theater, which is good for golf. And to Tiger specifically, just to go back to that part of the conversation where golf doesn't have the next Tiger, playing right now. There's a lot of great golfers. There's some guys that are consistently good, but Tiger was a different breed. Like, he was on a different planet. He's MJ, he's LeBron, he's Matthews. He's Crosby.
I would have said Gretzky, but anyway, yeah, go Leafs, go. Okay,
he's definitely McDavid. He's that once in a lifetime, once in a generation talent. They don't have that yet, and whether or not, remember when LeBron, Wade, and Bosh all went to Miami to create the super team, and everybody was up in arms because they're cheating at the sport and they shouldn't have. This is just their way of buying a championship. But we all watched it. We all wanted them to win. We all wanted them to be in the finals. As much as we hate to see the Patriots be as good for as long as they are. You love to see teams and players and people dominate, and nobody's dominated golf like Tiger, or since Tiger anyway. But he'll keep playing up until his body just tells him he can't. I think you guys all made some good points where this is a guy who's been playing golf since he was 4 years old, 5 years old. He doesn't know to do anything else. So as long as he can play, he'll keep playing. Phil Mickelson won tournaments when he was 50. Sam Snead won tournaments when he was 52 or 53, and Tiger's getting up there now. But how great would it be to see, a 57-year-old or 60-year-old Tiger win the Masters? So, it'd be a hell of a story. And we'll keep watching him until he ultimately decides he can't, or his body just won't allow him to anymore. So, I'm with you guys. I enjoy watching Tiger sometimes more than golf itself. So if he's getting to the end of his career, I think it's a pretty big deal, not just for the PGA, but for golf in general.
Yeah, you definitely make some great points. And I mean, could we see Tiger Woods win a major at 50, 60 plus years? That's one thing. But one thing I definitely disagree with, I did not want to see LeBron James win as a member of the Miami Heat. I did.
Nope.
It was fun.
Neither did I.
Anyway, guys, it's a blast as always. Dan, Tony, thank you so much for everything. Neel, your first go around at What's Up the Sports podcast. Any thoughts?
That was a great discussion. I loved hearing Dan and Tony's and your points all across the board. Great topics. Learned a few things. Fun to share some insight. And it's a blast.
Hey, thank you so much thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely do it again. For Tony Antoniou, Dan Leggieri, and Neel Katarey, my name is Randy Kure. This is What's Up the Sports Podcast at What's Up Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will talk to you next time.